In this tutorial, we're going to build on the application that we created in the last three parts. And we're also going to introduce ourselves to a new feature of Firebase, which is real-time databases. So to start with, let's create another view in our application. To do that, let's first embed our home view into a tab bar controller. That will help us get tabs at the bottom to access the other pages. Start by setting the tab bar controller size to 4.7 inches as always, just to make things easier. Now as you can see, this icon here is empty. What we do is we'll give it a custom name and a custom image. I've put in a custom set of icons which I've put into my assets folder. I'll put in the link in the description so that all of you can also have a look at it and get these icons. Coming back to our main storyboard. So now we want the user to log in and go directly to the home view and have this tab bar at the bottom. As of now, the user is going directly from the login view to the home view. So we need to change that. We come to our view controller. We see that after the user is logged in, it is sent directly to the home view. So let's call this the tab bar controller view. And we'll have to rename this, give this a storyboard ID of tab bar controller view. Okay, and now we need to add another view. So what we'll do is let's add a table view controller. Also set its size to 4.7. And to add another tab to this, we just need to control click and drag from there into the view and say relationship segue view controllers. There we have another tab. Let's rename that tab also as settings and call this settings, or not setting, let's call this profile. Now let's run this and just see if we have this working. There we have it. We have the profile and the home view. Okay, so now let's add a new controller for our table view. And we'll call it profile table view controller. We'll keep only one section in the table view, and let's just assume that we have a few rows in our table. Let's call them where about, and let's just give it gender, age, phone, email, website, and bio. Okay. Next, we need to return the number of rows that will be displayed in the table view. So for that, we'll set it as the length of the array. Now we need to configure how each row will look under the cell for row at index path. For this, what we'll do is we'll go to the main storyboard first and add a text field in the prototype cell. And let's quickly set the constraints for this. There, we have the cell set. Now what we'll do is we'll create a new Swift file. And call it text input table view. And what we do is we'll just import UIKit and we'll create a class called public class text input table view UI table view cell. And what we'll do is we'll go to the main storyboard, select the table view cell and set the class as text input table view. Coming back here, it's called text input table view. I'm going to the main storyboard again, going to the split editor and open that file here. and control drag from here to create an outlet and call it my text field. What we'll also do is we'll create another function called configure. It'll take two fields. One will be a text field and one will be a placeholder. Both will be strings. And basically what it will do is it will set the value of the text and the value of the placeholder. Okay, coming back to our profile table view controller.swift, we'll have to change this and we'll have to give it the identifier. First, we'll have to create the cell of type text input table view, and we'll have to force downcast this a text input table view and give it a reuse identifier from, and just give it a reuse identifier of text input. And we need to go into the main storyboard and set this reuse identifier here. We select the text input table view, and under the attributes inspector, we set the reuse identifier, which will be text input. Okay. Now, come back to the profile table view. What we'll do is the configure function that we created, we'll call that cell.configure. And in this, what we'll do is we'll set the string to blank, and we'll give the placeholder the name of the field that we've created in an array, which will basically be about, and we'll call the index path dot row on it, and we'll return the cell. So this should give us the cell. Let's run it and see. We go into profile, and there we have it. We have the text fields, but as you can see that it's going out of the screen right now. So what we'll do is we'll give it an insert. We'll come to the top in the ViewDidload. We'll write self.tableview.content insert equal to inserts make, and here we'll give it about a 20. Let's see that again. Okay, and one more thing we'll do is we'll go to the main storyboard, just so that we have space to put another button. We'll click on this and we go to editor, embed in, and navigation bar controller. So that, and we can name this edit profile, and we can add a button here called update, so that when the user is updated all the text fields, you can press update. Just running that again quickly, and this is what we have here. Now we start with the fun part, which is the Firebase real-time database. So let's start by going into the documentation of Firebase, and if you're going to get started, we should see that the first thing we need to do is that we need to install Firebase database like we've installed the other pods. So let's go into our app, and there we are, and we'll do nano pod file, and we'll add Firebase database here. Save this, and as always, pod install. So we've installed Firebase database, and we need to import it into our file by using import Firebase to our project. So we'll go here and go into our profile table view controller and import Firebase database, and we'll create a reference to the Firebase database. We'll just call it ref, and we'll make a reference to that. And we'll also get the current user, which will be fir auth. For that, we'll need to import Firebase auth. So and get the current user. So there we have the current user. Now what we want to do is basically when the user clicks, enters his data in the text fields and clicks update, we want it to update on the server. So let's go and first open up this file, which is profile table view controller, and let's create an outlet for update. Control drag and we did tap update, and we'll make it a action connect. Okay, so what we're going to do is basically if we go into our Firebase console, my app, and we go into database, we can see that we have a database over here which has no values, it's null. So we can start by going here and we'll run a while loop when the user clicks update to loop over all the text fields and take out all the data and send it to a Firebase database. So let's see how we're going to do that. We'll just create an index to start with called index and give it a value of 0. Then we'll run a while loop while index less than about.count. Get the index path of the particular cell. For row, and we'll give the row index, and section, since we have only one section, we'll leave it at 0. Then we'll get the cell, which is text input table view, which equals self dot table view dot cell for row at index path, and give it index path, and we'll have to force downcast it as text input table view. Now what we do is, this is going to be index path, sorry. So now what we do is we check if cell dot my text field, basically if the cell is empty or not. So if it's not empty, basically we'll get the value of it and store it in a string called item. So we're going to do cell dot my text field dot text, and this is going to ask us to force unwrap it. So there we have item. And what we're going to do next is basically we'll have to run a switch statement to check which row it is. So okay, so basically we've created our switch statement, but what we need to do is every time a row is there, so when it checks and it sees that okay, the gender row is not empty, we need to send data to a Firebase database. So let's go see how we're going to do that. We can go to save data, and what it wants us to do is, if you see, you have to create a node and you have to set the value. So let's follow this and come here. What we're going to do is we're going to do self.ref.child. Okay, so we want it to be of type user profile, the first node. The child of that node should be the user ID, which is user.uid, and it should be under gender. Then we set value item. I'll show you what this exactly does when we execute it. Okay, so we've set that up now. One more thing we need to do in this is that this is going to be end switch and if, and we're going to update the index at the end of the while loop. So basically, if it sees that gender is not empty, it's going to send this data and store it under gender. This is going to store it inside age, phone, email, etc. So let's see what it does now. Running the application. So if we go here, we put in male and we just put in age 23 and we just put in 400 and we just leave it at that and just click update. See, it doesn't show that anything's happened, but if you go back to our database, see, we have age, gender and phone, which is already updated. So like we said, now it'll become more clearer to you. Under our database, we've put in a node called user profile. You can think of it as a table. Under that, we have a user ID, and under that, we have the values for that user ID. So now suppose we go here and we add in a website as well. So you go www.youtube.com and update it. You will see that it's updated live there. The website has come. You can also change anything and it will overwrite it. So you say you can make this female just to see, and you update and then you go back. There it is, gender has been updated. The only problem right now that we have is that if we in the simulator, if we go to the home page and go back, it's still there. But if we go to the home page, we log out and we log back in, we don't have any of these details over here. So we managed to send the data up to the server, but we need to be able to retrieve this data from the server as well for the user to see what he's entered before. It'll be pointless otherwise. So let's see how we're going to do that now. So we'll go into the ViewDidload method. So when the view first loads, and we need to add something known as an observer, which we'll see over here in the retrieve data section of the documentation. You'll see that there's this code snippet given here. We paste that in here. Basically, this is an observer for the database. Anytime the database changes, it'll receive a snapshot from it. So what we'll do is we'll call this var ref handle, and instead of post ref, we'll refer to the reference that we created earlier on the top over here, which is var ref Firebase database, and the node that we're accessing is user profile. So we'll say child will be user profile, and then we'll add an observed event type to it. And what we'll do is we'll say that let users dictionary equal to snapshot.value as ns dictionary. Then what we can do is we'll get the user details from user dictionary dot object for key, and we can say self dot user dot uid. And the reason I'll tell you why I'm doing this is basically what we can see over here. First, I'll show you something. Let's just print this user dictionary first. So if you go here, you'll see this is the data that we get. It's identified by the UID, the same structure that's here in our database, like this, is available to us over here. So using this particular UID, we can access the data that we want to display, which is the age, gender, phone, website, bio, etc. So let's see. What we'll have to do now is we'll have to again create a while loop to loop over all the data and display it into the text fields. To save time, I'm just going to copy this code and then I'll discuss it with you. Okay, so I've pasted in the code that we need for this. Let's just discuss it. Basically, we're running a while loop while the index, which starts from 0, is less than the length of the array. The same way we got the index path earlier, we'll get the index path, we'll get the cell, and from the cell we'll store the placeholder this time instead of the text in the cell. So we'll store the placeholder into a variable known as field. We'll run a switch loop over the field, put in all the cases, and then we'll use the cell.configure function that we had created to extract the data from the dictionary that we received and update it into the text field. So we see that configure, we're adding the object for key, gender, which will be female in this case, convert it as a string, and in the placeholder we'll just add, this should be gender. That's all we need to do to get the data into our text fields from the database. So now let's run this and see if it works. Okay, there you see we've got our data from our database, what we had entered. Let's also try and update this and see if it updates. Let's give it the email and update it. There you see it's got a live update. So that's just the start with the real-time databases in Firebase. I hope you guys like this and you try this out. And we'll dig into some other stuff in the future videos. Thanks.